Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video is going to continue along the Trouble with Bankers series. It's quite a treasure trove, and it's equally as entertaining as any of the other subjects that I could be focusing on. It has to do with organized crime, has to do with money laundering, the concealment of sources and uses of money, the concealment of people's true identity, because of course we're talking about actors. Talking about operatives. CIA operatives are actors. Many of them have professional acting training, some do not, but they're all playing a role. All the world is a stage, and the people are actors upon the stage, as William Shakespeare told us. For 2023, I'm adopting some new mantras just to keep things spicy and interesting on my channels. And my first motto for 2023 is, it's better to be slapped on the face with the truth than to be kissed by a lie. And then the second motto I'm going to follow is, the long arm of coincidence will answer your question, does correlation equal causation? And on my channel, the answer is always an emphatic yes, it does. Yes, it does. All right, so with that, let me just, quick like a bunny rabbit, summarize my first video on the Trouble with Bankers, which followed the Trouble with Tribbles, where we had Jewish people changing their names to appear non-Jewish. That's part of the Trouble with Tribbles, and the Trouble with Star Trek, and the Trouble with Columbo. In the television detective series Columbo, which ran well over 30 years, from cradle to grave, we have a Polish-Jewish, Hungarian-Jewish man, Peter Falk, and he portrays an Italian. He portrays the Italian off camera and on camera when he's filming Columbo, which is portrayed as an Italian sleuth working for the Los Angeles Metropolitan Police Department. So that's kind of a deception, wouldn't you agree? That people are not who they say they are, right? Or who they imply they are. That is the magic of Hollywood, which if you examine the finances and the money laundering concealment that goes on with the major studios in Hollywood, and then all the straw companies and the pornography industry in San Fernando Valley, and over to Malibu and the Malibu Highway, and over on the hillsides there, and Calabasas and West Hills and Hidden Hills and Van Nuys and Sherman Oaks and Canoga Park and Chatsworth, you have the concealment of porn, which is an integral part of the Hollywood industry, which is Jewish managed, Jewish supervised, and Jewish produced, with full bank support. And many of the bankers are Jewish, and some of the bankers are not Jewish. But that operation that is known as Hollywood, it's an organized crime operation facility, and there are hundreds of homicides that go with it. Now, that's what they did with the silly Sicilians in New York, the five crime families of New York, right, which were mostly Sicilian, right? Well, if that's true, then Hollywood is a Jewish organized crime. And in my list of 14 bankers that I provided in my Trouble with Bankers videos, at least a third of the names are Jewish, and quite frankly, I think half the names are, but I can't really prove it. But we know Jerome Kohlberg is Jewish, and he founded KKR. The other two initials, K and R, are Henry Kravis, he's Jewish, and George Roberts, he's Jewish, and he's the cousin of Henry Kravis, barbarian at the gate. So actually, those are three Jewish people. I only counted one, but they're all associated with KKR. Then there's another Jewish person there named Dean Jacobson, and he sounds Jewish, and he went to Harvard and has an MBA from Stanford, and he is the last person to see Erin Valenti alive at 2500 Sand Hill Road. And she turned up dead as a doornail in the back of her rent-a-car after her appointment with Dean Jacobson, which went from 1:30 p.m. until 3 p.m. where I'm sure someone offered her a glass of water, a bottled water, a drink, a soda, a cup of tea. You always got to be careful accepting drinks, as we learned from Michele Sedona, who accepted a cup of cappuccino laced with cyanide. He was one of the bankers on my list. So I'm going to run through my 14 bankers and just play a little mathematical probability game with you. Okay, so my bankers were, number one was Ines Mejia, who outlived all the other bankers. She lived to age 100. Ines Mejia, from El Salvador heritage. Her parents living on a land trust and ambassadors to El Salvador. She was born and raised in, well, she was born in Piedmont. She was really raised all over the world. San Francisco, Paris, London. She played piano and spoke fluent French, and she gave piano lessons. And her daughter, Abigail Folger, is why, we know her, because we know her through Abigail, even though Ines Mejia was a more important, more established, more mature clandestine service private banker than anyone on this list of people that I have here. And her career, I think, was terminated more or less when her daughter was bayoneted by NATO forces, Operation Gladio, in Beverly Hills, 90210 Benedict Canyon, in a place where her daughter did not live, but was just staying overnight that one night because she had an early morning plane flight out of LAX airport, which is a 20-minute drive from the murder scene. Whereas if she stayed where she lived in Laurel Canyon at 2774 Woodstock Road, you can add another 25 minutes to that drive. So I understand she wanted to get back to San Francisco and have it out with her mother, Ines Mejia. Anyway, so we had Ines Mejia, we have Abigail Folger, we have Paul Pelosi, whose career took off right after Abigail Folger was killed, murdered. And Ines Mejia was neutralized, age 62. Age 62, and I think beginning her retirement years. Not that she needed the money, because she's already nobility status. Living on Broadway in Pacific Heights. Yeah. Very close proximity to the Sacred Heart Convent Academy at 2222 Broadway, and that's 3 blocks from the Paul Pelosi fake hammer attack that never happened. And Paul Pelosi does not live in that home. He lives on Pacific Avenue, 1 block up the hill from where the incident at 2640 Broadway happened. Anyway, so we had Ines Mejia, Abigail Folger, Paul Pelosi, private banker. Then we have Jerome Kohlberg, a Jewish man from New Rochelle, New York, who founded KKNR in 1972, directly across the street from the Stanford University campus and the Linear Accelerator, where they receive billions of dollars from the Department of Energy to conduct meaningless tests. Right across the street, adjacent to Sand Hill Road. It's actually across from 2500 Sand Hill Road, where Erin Valenti was last seen alive, at a KKNR office at 2500 Sand Hill Road. The big main office is at 2750 Sand Hill Road. It's just a couple hundred yards away. It's the next parking lot up the hill on Sharon Heights. Like Sharon Tate, Sharon Heights. That's where the big shots, Doug Leone, Don Valentine, Jerome Kohlberg, Henry Kravis, George Roberts, they are all on Sharon Heights. Yeah, and just right beside that is where 2500 Sand Hill Road is. It's near Father Junipero Serra Boulevard is. Take you to the Stanford campus and to Sam Bankman-Fried's house. He's only 3.5 miles distance from Doug Leone. So he can get over for his Starbucks coffee allowance from Dougie anytime he wants. Anyway, so Jerome Kohlberg, and then we got Don Valentine. He's from the Bronx and Fordham University Jesuit. So that's 5. Then I got Doug Leone, who we talked about. He was the managing partner of Sequoia Capital when FTX was funded, right? And he was the managing partner of Sequoia Capital when Erin Valenti went missing, 1 parking lot away from where he parks his car. And then we have Eugene Kleiner. He's a Jewish man from Vienna, Austria, via New York City. And Eugene Kleiner has engineering background degrees and went out to Silicon Valley I guess, to go into the semiconductor business, but he ended up being working at Fairchild briefly, and then he became a private banker along with Tom Perkins. And then on my list I had Roberto Calfi operating out of Milan, Italy, and also Rome, and also London, and also Geneva, Switzerland. And then I have Michele Sedona, who's a Sicilian, graduated from University of Messina, and he becomes the president of the Franklin National Bank of Long Island, which is the primary bank for the five crime families of New York. The 5 Sicilian crime families have a Sicilian private banker. He's the Milbourne Drysdale was to Jed Clampett in Beverly Hills, what Michele Sedona was to the Colombo family, the Genoveses, the Lucchese family, the Bonanno family of New York. So that's 10. Then I named Paul Marcinkus, who is starting to look a lot Jewish to me. But anyway, he is raised in Cicero, Illinois, and he becomes the president of the Bank of Vatican, which goes by IOR, so that you won't think it's a bank. The Institute of Religious Studies. The only thing they're studying at the IOR is counting money, okay? And he's from Chicago, Illinois, where Al Capone's from. Al Capone is from Cicero. Paul Marcinkus is from Cicero. Al Capone is from Cicero. Jack Ruby, a.k.a. Jacob Rubenstein, a Jewish gentleman who shot, allegedly, Lee Oswald, he's from Cicero. Jack Ruby. That's where Jose Menendez went to be the president, first a controller and then the CEO of a container intermodal transportation company in Cicero. That's where the president of the Bank of Vatican came from. Do you see a little correlation equals causation issue here? Al Capone, Jack Ruby, Jose Menendez, Paul Marcinkus, all coming out of there. And we got Virginia Hill. She's going to be in this story a little later. Virginia Hill, who ends up having this fancy house in Beverly Hills where Bugsy Siegel gets shot 9 times with a military M1 30 caliber semi-automatic rifle that's used in World War II and the Korean War. The M1 rifle, military, shot through his window at 810 North. Oh, I'll give you the address in a second. Anyway, so that, Virginia Hill was, Hollywood wants you to think that she's Ben Siegel, a Jewish man's girlfriend. But she was only with him for 2.5 years, and she had 4 husbands and a whole bunch of other boyfriends. Okay, so I don't think that Ben Siegel and Virginia Hill were together very long. I think she's more of a control agent than a girlfriend. Anyway, the home was allegedly belonged to her, but it doesn't. It belongs to the same people that own Cielo Drive houses. They own the Ben Siegel murder site too, okay? It's just down the hill. Yeah, it's 1.3 miles away. If you're wondering how close Peter Falk's home is from where Ben Siegel was killed, the answer is 3 blocks and 0.6 miles. It's a half a mile. It's about 750 yards away. Peter Falk. And also Jack Benny, and also Lucille Ball, and also Jimmy Stewart, and also, George Gershwin, Ira Gershwin, Agnes Moorehead. They all lived in close proximity to where Bugsy Siegel was shot 9 times, twice in the head, blown out his eyeball, in 1947, when Bugsy Siegel was 41 years old. Anyway, he was with a girl who's from Cicero, Illinois. She wasn't home. Her brother was home. There were 5 people in the house when this happened, and I'll go through that in a little bit. Anyway, what you should know is that there's a lot of criminal activity coming out of Cicero, Illinois, which includes Jose Menendez, who goes into the porn business for RCA, and then later with Carol Co. Pictures to conceal the fact that Hollywood is in the porn industry. But I'm here to tell you, Hollywood is in the porn industry. All right, so I think we were at Paul Marcinkus. Then we have Meyer Lansky, not his real name. Although Meyer Lansky does sound Jewish. He had a more Jewish name, and he turned it into Meyer Lansky. He was born and raised in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And this is where Ben Bugsy Siegel was born and raised in the east side of Manhattan and became childhood pals with Meyer Lansky, who Meyer Lansky is about 3.5 years older than Bugsy Siegel. Anyway, they were lifelong companions and friends, and they're both Jewish, right? And then we have Mickey Cohen, and he's Jewish also, and he starts out his life as a boxer, and he spends time up in Chicago way as well, and ends up out in Los Angeles working. Eventually, he works for Bugsy Siegel, aka Ben Siegel. And then when Ben Siegel is assassinated in 1947, then Mickey Cohen assumes more authority and begins working with Johnny Roselli. Johnny Roselli also has Chicago, Illinois connections, Miami connections, and is connected up with Meyer Lansky. And Johnny Roselli, as you may know, was done away with in a 55-gallon drum in Biscayne Bay, Miami, Florida, floating around out there. Anyway, that was my 14 bankers, and I'm going to add Erin Valenti to my list. Erin Valenti, murdered at age 33. Last appointment at 2500 Sand Hill Road. That would make 15 bankers that I featured yesterday. And of those 15 bankers, how many of them were assassinated, murdered? People think that banking is a safe job, right? It's not like being a hoodlum, right? It's not like being a policeman, right? Oh, are you kidding me? It's way more dangerous than being a policeman. Far more dangerous. Let me give you the names of the people that were murdered. Abigail Folger, murdered by bayonet 28 times at age 25. Okay? Bugsy Siegel, he's murdered at age 41, shot 9 times with a military rifle. Abigail was stabbed with a military M7, United States Army NATO issue, military weapon, killed. Bugsy Siegel, killed with a military M1 carbine, 30 caliber, semi-automatic rifle. It's military. So those first two are military examples. Then, who else do I got that was murdered? Well, I'll tell you. I got Roberto Calfi. Now, he's hung by an orange rope with a love knot with 13 pounds of concrete bricks in his Italian suit pockets over the River Thames underneath the scaffolding of the Blackfriars Freemasonry Bridge. Okay? And he was discovered at 7:30 a.m. on a Friday morning. I believe it was June 18th, 1982, facing the financial center of the world, the center of London, which is on the east side of the Thames River. Judy Garland, just so you know, was murdered very close by, walking distance from where this bridge is. She was murdered on the west side of the Thames River in West London, but walking distance from the bridge. Then we had Michele Sindona get murdered in a woman's prison in Lombardia, and he took the cappuccino with the cyanide. And then we had Bugsy Siegel, who was put into retirement for the military weapon. So that's 5 out of the 15 names that I can confirm were murdered. Bugsy Siegel was 41 years old. Abigail Folger was 25 years old. Roberta Calfi was 62. Michele Sindona was 66. Ben Siegel was 41. So those are 5 bankers who were murdered by the clandestine service sanctioned hits. You just don't go around shooting bankers unless you get permission. Anyway, that's 1/3. Now, there's a bunch of names on here, like Mickey Cohen, for example. He died under suspicious circumstances at age 62. He went in to have stomach surgery and ended up dying on the surgeon's table. So it's kind of like, did he really die that way, or did someone murder him? So Mickey Cohen died at 62, and it kind of looks like it was medical malpractice or a homicide. But we're just calling it, whatever, just people die. And Paul Pelosi, he hasn't died. He's 82 years old, But my goodness me, look at all the near fatal accidents that Paul Pelosi has been involved with. At age 16, he ends up flipping his sports car on Skyline Boulevard in San Mateo County near Crystal Springs Reservoir, killing his older brother. So his older brother's dead, and Paul Pelosi then gets transferred from St. Ignatius de Loyola High School in the Presidio Heights area of San Francisco, the Haight-Ashbury part of the Presidio, and is sent to Philadelphia to go to an all-boys boarding school. And then when he's done with that, he goes to Georgetown University Jesuit in the Swamp, Washington, D.C. And that's where he met Nancy D'Alessandro, a.k.a. the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, in Washington, D.C. She was going to Trinity College. Anyway, Paul Pelosi almost, derailed Jesus Lopez last May 2022, in his $200,000 911 Porsche Carrera. It's a miracle that no one was killed. Paul Pelosi had a passenger in that car, and we don't know who they are, and the Sheriff's Department will not release the audio 911 call tape, which could perhaps, shed some light as to who was with Paul Pelosi, where was he coming from. We know that his car ended up in a Rothschild vineyard known as Opus 1 at the corner of State Highway 29 and Oakville Cross Road, which is near a Carmelita retreat for the Catholic monks. It's walking distance from there. It's strange. It's just another strange part of the story that we don't talk about. And then they had this alleged styrofoam hammer attack, which I'm calling that poppycock and nonsense. But if it's true, then that's a hammer attack that almost killed Paul Pelosi, right? So that's 3 near-fatal situations that Paul Pelosi has been in that we know of. I'll bet he's been in others that we don't know about, but that's 3. We also had the Zodiac killing in his neighborhood. That could have been Paul Pelosi instead of Paul Stein. That was another Paul Stein, age 29, the same exact age as Paul Pelosi, who lived in Presidio Heights when Paul Stein was murdered. So that's actually 4 near-miss situations for Paul Pelosi. But as far as we know, he's not dead. So there's a private banker who's not dead. But we know Roberto Calfi's dead. We know that Michele Sindona is dead. We know that Abigail Folger is dead. We know that Ben Siegel is dead. We know that Erin Valenti, who was visiting with Dean Jacobson at 2500 Sand Hill Road, right across from the Stanford University Linear Accelerator, she's dead. And I suspect that Mickey Cohen was murdered, all right? That would be 6, but he wasn't on my list. So it's only 5 out of 15 were murdered. So that's an extremely disturbing mortality rate for you statisticians out there. All right, so that's kind of my point. Now I have hours of content that I could talk about where we look at Toronto, Canada, where Neil Young came from, where Mike Myers, who plays Austin Powers, dressed in the Roman Polanski costume that was worn for the fake Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski fake wedding in London, in West London, where they got their paperwork at the Chelsea registry, but no one ever looked at it. It was never reported or disclosed. Then they had a 2-hour cocktail party at the Playboy Club, which is in the same building that the Church of Scientology compulsion analysis is, known as the Process Church when it moved over to New Orleans way, and San Francisco and Los Angeles became the Process Church. But it was the division of compulsion analysis when it was in the building where the Playboy Club is, where the fake Roman Polanski, dressed like Mike Myers, Austin Powers costume was in 1968, January 20th, 1968. There they are. Yep. All right, so I'm not going to get into that because I'm going to try to keep these videos a little shorter. I'll just save it for the next series. All right, so banking is dangerous, especially if you're going to be in the money laundering business. It looks like 1/3 of them gets killed, and the other 2/3 lives in constant fear in beautiful homes with hedgerows and no sidewalks. Thanks for listening. Take care.